and welcome to GameGuru live broadcast version 2, and I must extend my sincere apologies for the 24-minute technical error. You couldn't make this stuff up, but apparently at the very second of clicking start stream, I got an error message saying something to do with visibility and no, you can't do a live stream, and thus began a 20-something minutes of adventure. I'm hoping everyone found the new stream and is not sitting around on the old stream. If you can find, maybe through Discord, anyone who may be sitting around and waiting, you could tell them that there's a new stream and just send them the YouTube channel link, and they'll find it with the little live icon in the bottom right corner, and then everyone will be happy and hunky-dory. It wasn't 24 minutes of actual technical difficulty. I actually added an extra 4 minutes for people to move over from the old stream to the new stream. And I'm not entirely sure yet that any of this is working. I'm just literally talking into a microphone right now. So I'm going to get my live chat up. You can not see it, but I can. And I just want to know, you know what I'm going to ask? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is everything working? Give me some positivity in the chat so we know everything is good and I can move on with what has been built up into this super announcement that will only disappoint. So if you can just say everything is going okay, and then we can get cracking with all the things we shall talk about today. So Netcrim, so far so good. That's great. And everyone can hear me. Don't touch anything. I agree. I'm just glad I managed to get it to work. It looked at the outset like a seriously fundamental issue, i.e. I've been messing with accounts, and that could have literally broke all of the underlying infrastructure and we'd never have had this live broadcast. Fortunately, if you click enough buttons, eventually just by accident and probability you get things to work. And hopefully you've also got your live chat. You can see it on the screen. That please stand by screen that some of you may have seen briefly at the start of the second stream is a new idea I'm trying out where we can get the chat window set up nice and quick before the broadcast officially starts. Completely went out the window as a benefit, as it took 20 minutes to get anything running. But we're here now, that's the main thing. And of course in the edit we'll just delete the first 25 minutes. So I guess you're all wondering why you're here. Well, originally I did promise that I would do two live broadcasts, one in June and one in December. This is the June live broadcast. There will be another one, as I promised, in a December live broadcast, and the format is going to be Q&A all the way through. So apart from me saying hello, we switch straight into Q&A. You can start asking your questions and I'll be happy to answer them. But before any of that, it's the 12th of June. You want to know what's going on. And it is big, actually. And it isn't we've fixed all the bugs, because I think that wouldn't have been much of a surprise if anyone looked at the issues board. Those numbers are really quite low now. I'm quite pleased about that. No. The big news, it's foundational. In fact, it's earthquake level news, and it's good news. You'll be pleased to hear. And I'm curious, actually, I've not read the chat, but I'm curious if anyone's already like spilled the beans or have guessed correctly and everybody already knows, but I can actually confirm it officially now. In a nutshell, the Game Creators has sold all of the game making IP to me, to little old Lee. So now Lee owns all of the game makers all the way back to 1999, and I've created a new company to act as an umbrella to all those game making intellectual properties and products, and this is the name: Dark Basic Software Limited. Now anyone who's old enough will know what that means. Those who don't, look it up. Or even better, check out the most excellent documentary by Scott Tanner. It gives you a full history of the company and all of its products. And you could argue, and it's probably a good argument, that Lee couldn't think of a better name. But actually, it's more important than that. And just to sort of fill you in, so there's a lot of newcomers coming in, don't really know what I'm talking about. Dirt Basic Software Limited was the original company I created back in 1999. Unoriginally named Dirt Basic Software Limited to sell a product called Dirt Basic. And that was my first foray into creating a company and to run it and to do proper businessy type things. And fortunately, it became successful, and that eventually became the Game Creators. And so, striking out with a company number 2, it kind of felt right to go back to my roots and the very first commercial game maker, which was Dirt Basic. And so Dirt Basic Software Limited. I still have my old business cards. I still have some of the old logo artwork. So it's great. It feels right to sort of almost go back to the very beginning, the genesis really of why I got into making software in the first place. I really like making game making tools. I'm okay at games, better at making the tools. Some out there right now would argue that point, that Lee's not good at anything. But that's the idea behind it. It's sort of, it sends the message that this is going back to basics, pun intended, and we're going to focus on the fun stuff, the creative stuff. And I can give you lots of little nuances and details, but I think that might come out better in the Q&A. You'll have your burning questions and you'll want some answers. What I can say is for the last couple of years, we have seen a decline in revenues on selling game making tools. That's quite natural when you look at the marketplace, as more game makers were released as free to use and backed by mega corporations like Epic, who could afford to just give away insanely cool features and assets, etc., etc. You can't really compete in an environment like that. And of course, traditionally built on box product, and making them printing CDs and then sending them out through the post, then eventually to digital products, and then eventually the market transforming into a place where trying to sell a product for $40, $50 when you can buy something that's better for free, very difficult. And because of that, certainly the last 3-4 years, we have started to see those sorts of declines, up to a point where it was no longer viable with all of the game making products combined to run as a business. If you were to start a new business today, you could not use the revenues of those game makers to keep that business running. It wasn't viable. Now, hats off to TGC, we kept it going. With a skeleton crew and resources, we managed to continue to put out bug fixes, press releases, supporting the third-party artists who wanted to sell DLC, continuing not only to fix bugs but to add features and to run all the socials and all the different websites. And I think we did an extraordinarily good job with very few resources at our disposal. But it came to a head really when not only is it wasn't just break even or not quite viable, it was very unviable. And so I made the suggestion that perhaps I can alter my role at TGC, so I become more of a chairman and a strategic advisor, etc. So I'm still very much part of TGC, but I get to spend more of my time working on game makers, and everyone at TGC agreed, which was really nice. So what you're going to find from the 12th of June onwards, in fact, it's actually been since the start of May, but what you'll find is where I had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of plates to spin, and some of those plates were not game making. All of my plates are now game making. Monday to Friday, Saturday to Sunday, 24/7, 365. Lee sitting in his little cave, tinkering with his favourite toys year in, year out. And so that's basically the news. You'll find over the next couple of weeks that where you've got things that are called the Game Creators under the moniker of developer and publisher, we start changing that to Dirt Basic Software Limited, and you'll see that iterate through social channels, our websites, GitHub, things like that. So don't be too surprised when you start to see those changes. And also, you might start seeing the original 25-year-old yellow pyramid logo start to appear. That was really just some art that I managed to dig out, and I just needed to differentiate between all the different accounts, and the logo made a lot of sense. Probably won't be the final logo, and it's going to be a lot of fun sort of recreating sort of an alter ego to sort of umbrella this new effort. And we'll get to do things in different ways, and I think you'll see that as the development starts to unfold. And it's something that synergizes with the message that was delivered towards the end of Scott Tanner's documentary, where it started with TGC versus the community, and it concluded that the best way forward was TGC with the community. I'm going to modify that to DBS with the community. And so we're going to transform this into a community effort, a largely creative effort. As I've already explained, revenues does not justify it being a business effort right now. This is all for fun. This is fun, this is creative. Let's focus on the product and do all the things that feel right and make the product great. And we have the time to do that now, and we have a lot of support in the community, both people who are cheering us on, but also active contributors. I don't want to single too many people out, but I think if I mention the names Preben and Necrim, you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. Selfless dedication to the effort and the goal of creating a unique game maker product in this space. Let's deal with the business things later and try and figure out how to make it a viable, resource-rich entity. But that's for the future. For now, we now have that breathing room to take the product to that next level. And it's quite nice to know that we start this journey with an issues board with less than 10 bugs in it. We've been working with late-stage game projects, and specifically on things like stability and performance. You know, some of the last things that you really want to make a successful game release. And so we're starting to see those improvements. When we say, for example, first got a standalone game and it was stuttering almost right out the gate, by the time we'd finished, it was silky smooth all the way through at 60 FPS. So identifying those little edge cases for that one game then iterates into the main product, and everybody benefits from said same performance. So just to give you a little rundown before I go to answering your questions, at the corner of my eye I'm seeing the live chat going nuts, and I'm just going to have to scroll to the top at some point and find all in questions. As usual, you're more likely to not get ignored. I wouldn't do it on purpose, but I might miss your question if you haven't got a question mark at the beginning or the end, or a Q or a question or a massive question in square brackets and capitals, just so I can find them quickly, especially there might be a lot of questions today. And in terms of timeline, there is no limit. I'm not going to stop at 59 minutes. I'll be here for as long as there are burning questions that need clever answers. So let's not worry too much about the clock at this stage. So the idea, I'll just paint it in rough, because really it's up to us now as a community exactly what shape this is going to take over the next 6 months and 6 years. As I said, we're down to less than 10 bugs, but there's going to be more bugs hidden in there, especially as the games get more sophisticated. And so it's still priority to fix the bugs, but that's not going to be the 100% exhaustive, that's all we've got time to do, because it's just a handful of bugs now, and some of those are really edge case bugs. So we'll always fix the bugs, but we fix them quickly, and we report the fixes quickly, so you can test them quickly and move on. And inevitably, that then moves us on to phase, let's call it phase 3. Phase 1 was getting out of early access and Steam. Phase 2 was to fix all the bugs we still had. Phase 3 is, well, what happens after there's no more bugs to fix? Well, of course, that means functional improvements and features. And don't think we didn't want to add them. It's just we were disciplined enough to fix all the bugs first. And we took a bit of flack on that, but I'm glad we stuck to our principles, made sure that we got them bugs out the way, and hopefully created a culture of not adding too many new ones along the way. But when you add functions, you usually introduce a few bugs in that process. But now we're out of the phase 2 bug fixing priority system. Now we can get into the functionality. What things in the software didn't quite sit right, were in the wrong places, could have been better, shouldn't have been in there at all. We can now look at those items within the product and decide what to do about them together. Main meeting point as a community will be Discord. It's worked really well over the last year or two. I know it's not as sort of, you haven't got the legacy historical archive of, say, a forum, but I think that the Discord format is more dynamic, and because things change relatively quickly, some would argue didn't change very quickly at all, Lee. But from the 12th of June, things will change relatively quickly, and so the conversations will keep changing as well. There's no point talking about something from 6 months ago. It's either been fixed or added or improved or removed. So Discord's a pretty decent format, I think, right now for the community to engage in what they like, what they don't like, what they like to see, etc. And so that's where it will be. So that's it. It's fixing the bugs if they pop up within a week, hopefully, and then adding the functions and features that everyone agrees needs to be done. Don't worry, we will not be returning the voting board. That was a good idea in theory, terrible in practice. Instead, we're just going to take a very professional and measured approach to what is obviously needing doing next. I'll give you one example that Preben already spearheaded, which is the grid system. Why on earth did we put grid settings inside object properties? It made zero sense. It should be outside of an individual object's properties and a global setting, so you can actually activate grid mode and then do it with multiple objects. Little things like that. Those little improvements will go a long way. And there's other things. Won't go into too many details, but the update that went out about half an hour ago, or actually more like an hour ago now, includes improvements to the melee combat for the AI logic system for characters. And although I've not revealed much about it yet, I'm also working on the soldier gun-firing projectile style soldiers for their combat system, so things like getting into cover, hiding round corners, prone shooting, and all the things that you would expect from, say, Fallout level enemy AI, something that gives you a pretty decent fight. And my personal favourite, and I haven't quite figured out how to do it yet, commander mode. So you can drop in a character, mark him as commander with some high level settings, and that commander can overrule the decisions of any soldiers within that cadre. And so the commander can say direct multiple attacks at the same time from different angles, things like that. So I think with that, plus all of the basics you'd expect from a character running around trying not to get shot at, it should improve that AI. And that's one of the big critiques that I've read over the years, in terms of, yes, it's easy to drop in a character, but that character acts completely stupid. What was the point? So gameplay is going to be something that you'll see improve. Now we're not being distracted with what were literally hundreds and hundreds of bug reports not even 2 years ago. And so that is the version that you have today, the GameGuru MAX on Steam. 0 bugs, fast, stable, functions adding all the time. Happy days. But that's not the end of the news, and before we go to the Q&A, there's one more thing I'd like to state, and I think you'll agree, some may not, but I think it's the right move. I'll have enough resource now to put onto the DirectX 11 version of GameGuru MAX, the version that you're using right now. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to step away, but I am going to step back 1 foot in order to look at the DirectX 12 latest version of the Wicked engine. The Wicked engine we're using right now is about 2 years old, and we haven't synced with the latest version since then. The last version of DirectX 11 of the Wicked engine, that's the version that we're using. And we've had to add to it. We've gone off on our own fork in order to keep it relevant to what we wanted GameGuru MAX to do. But there's now a very clear daylight gap of about 2 years, And since then, DirectX 12 has really proved itself as a superior graphics technology, and we would like some of that. Now, we tried doing a DirectX 12 conversion a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and it didn't work. It worked in that it was straightforward enough. The whole point of Wicked is it's an abstraction layer graphics engine, which means you can, you know, upgrade that but keep your game or your game tool, whatever, and relatively intact. But the problem was we'd custom written the terrain, the trees, and the grass system, and there wasn't a direct swap in to the DirectX 12 version of the Wicked engine. There just wasn't the procedural terrain that we had, and the tree generation and the grass. The good news is, in the latest version of Wicked Engine, the DirectX 12 version of the Wicked Engine, it has all of that, and then some, and then some on top of them some. Now, it's not guaranteed. Remember, the first time I tried this, I failed, and so the reason I'm going to step back one step is to do a prototype, which is to take the current source code to GameGuru MAX, refactor out all of the comments, the stuff in that source code that still refers to GameGuru Classic. And a long time ago, we separated those source code bases. I thought it'd be really clever to have a single source code base that could spit out two products. Turns out that was a terrible, terrible idea. It just meant it took a lot longer to actually make changes to any of the products. And it was very rare that something you added would be used by both products. So we separated them out. But the GameGuru MAX source code, if anyone's actually browsed the repository, will notice quite a lot of if-defs mentioning really not just GameGuru Classic, but some other product variants as well. So stripping all that out is a refactoring exercise just to clean up the source code. And also take out anything or improve anything that's clearly super out of date, like some of the variable name conventions. But once that clean code base has been pulled out and then underlined, then I'm going to run a prototype where I basically rip out DirectX 11 entirely and then parachute in the DirectX 12 version from the latest Wicked engine and see if it explodes or not. So this will be a prototype phase. I'll be quite happy to share my progress through the socials, so you'll be able to keep an eye on what I'm up to. And the goal is to make sure that we are not out of date. If we stick with DirectX 11, you can get a lot of good games out of DirectX 11, don't get me wrong, but there's a couple of problems. One is going to be discontinued at some point. There will no longer be support or even available the DirectX 11 drivers or installer. It will just disappear from the universe. We don't want to be caught with a situation where you've got a product and then no operating system that supports it. So we have to go to DirectX 12. We've given DirectX 12 6 years, so it's managed to mature into something that's super rock solid. Every computer, probably everyone who has a computer right now, can run DirectX 12. So there's no issue of leaving some people behind. So DirectX 12 is now ubiquitous, and it's a standard graphics API architecture that we can rely on, and 100% of people will be able to use the DirectX 12 version. And when you see the feature list that comes out of this upgrade to DirectX 12, you'll kind of know why it was done. Not just to sort of future-proof ourselves, but it brings you in line with the graphical and even, thanks to the Wicked Engine's innovations, the non-graphical innovations that have come through. One example, texture streaming. One of the problems that we were tackling when we were looking at performance of some of the late stage games being written in GameGuru MAX was stuttering. And the stuttering, turns out, was there was too much graphics, too much textures in video memory at any one time. So the video card was thrashing the video memory with textures in and out as you changed your camera angle, as it looked at some new texture that had to swap in before it could render it. Thus, horrible stutter. With texture streaming, it only streams in textures at the resolution it needs at that particular point. And it does it multi-threaded, so it can actually hit the file system and completely not touch your 60 FPS smooth gameplay experience. Your game will continue at full smoothness, and the only artifact, if any, will be a slight blurring of a distant texture before it regains its higher, proper texture resolution. And texture streaming was something that we would have had to have written at great pains in DirectX 11, but basically comes for free with the latest Wicked engine in DirectX 12. So that's just one of probably 40 or 50 examples of, rather than you waiting for some feature to get added, it just gets switched on with the DirectX 12 implementation. But with such, I wouldn't say promise, but potential, the prototype's going to have to do a lot of tests. I mean, think about it. You're ripping out the entire underlying graphics engine and then dropping in, or rather shoving in from under a new one, and it all has to line up. What you're used to today, you know, all the ways in which you create levels and manage your game still has to work with this newfangled DirectX 12 one. So there's a lot of question marks there, and I've decided to sacrifice myself in order to go through those pains. And I'm happy to do that because the rewards are great. If we can pull it off, it will be awesome. It means the games that you're writing now, at some point there'll be this upgrade to DirectX 12, and you say, yes, I'll do that. And all of a sudden, your graphics pop, and your performance improves, and you've got more features you can switch on, without you necessarily having to learn a whole new game engine from scratch. So that's the benefit, and we'll still call it GameGuru MAX. So that's the second piece that I wanted to say. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions about that, and don't worry, I'm basically all over the communities, including the DirectX 11 one and all the other products as well. But I was born and bred to create technology right on the edge. And DirectX 11, it's pretty solid now, and there's enough contributors to be able to manage it well. And to be honest, Preben does a far better job at understanding and implementing features for the GameGuru MAX DirectX 11 version than I ever could. And it's a lot faster too. So it feels like a good split of labour for me to go and do the sort of the wires hanging out. It keeps exploding, but that's fine. I know there's a goal, the finish line at the end of it. I got so close last time, so I've already learned a few things, and I know not what to do this time. So I don't know how long it'll take. Probably even the rest of 2025 to get anything that's I can demonstrate. It could be a lot quicker, it could be a lot longer, but that's what prototypes are really about. Because we don't know, we have to do prototypes to sort of find that out. In theory, it should be quite simple. As I said, graphics abstraction layers are designed to do that. That you can pull out the underlying tech, drop in a new one, but the abstraction layer creates a common language between those two entities and should make the process smooth. But Wicked Engine changed a lot in those 2 years. Talk about refactoring. So yeah, I'll have my work cut out. So with that, and I hope and pray that the stream is still running and you can still hear me, because that is something I don't really want to repeat. Or if I did, it would be a very abbreviated version. So now I'm going to go right to the top. I'm not going to read the bottom, because if the bottom statements are all anger and riots and pitchforks, that might take the wind out my sails. So I'm going to start at the top, where everyone started off all lovely and positive and happy before they heard the traumatic newses. Okay, so just get past all the confirmations that everything's working fine. Raven says I was here. Yes, we did say that you got to be here or you're square. So well done everyone who is here on this momentous day, the 12th of June. You'll mark this day as day one of something strange and different. We know it's not multiplayer feature. You were absolutely correct, Xander. It is not. Okay, so we're all working. Let's see if we can get to a question. I don't think there's actually that many posts in the live chat, which is, I don't know whether that's encouraging or not, but certainly allows me to know that I can get all the questions answered in the next 17 hours. Okay, tapsing the foot. Yes, Necrom, I deserve that. Please be amazing news. Well, I'll find out at the end if you did think it was amazing or not. And we're going to have to scroll down a bit more. Will this come with pictures? No, I don't do pictures. I do talking. Ask anyone. He does the talking. GameGuru MAX crashes every time I open. Radeon could be the AMD driver issue. Install the March 2023 driver from AMD. That solves the crashing and the black screen issues. But with the DirectX 12 one, it's using a completely different set of drivers. That AMD are happier to maintain those as opposed to the old DX11 ones, which they just have left alone for the last couple of years. Otherwise, that would have been fixed by AMD at that point. Okay, looking for a question. Mark, exclamation marks need not apply. Okay. All right. Question. Anyone got a question? No, not yet. No issues with Windows 11. Yeah, Windows 11, I've also heard no issues about it, but we're still saying we wrote it with Windows 10 in mind. And so we can only guarantee support for Windows 10. But when enough of us have got Windows 11 on our machines as our main operating system, and I know they're discontinuing 10 now, keep getting the messages, then we will do a thorough test at some point, probably this year, and then include Windows 11 officially as an operating system that we can say we support and we sell to. As you can see, I just lost my place. I have to scroll back up. Okay. Oh, have I lost a lot of... I wonder if the chat actually stops off and cuts off at some point. Interesting. Okay, well, I guess it's chopped a load of top chat. Is there top chat and all chat? Live chat. All messages are visible. There you go. I must have accidentally gone to top chat. No, I didn't. That's it. Looks like it's cut off. So we'll just start from here. Leon's Max and Classic, not TGC. I'm sorry if I've cut off some... In fact, can I just scroll to the bottom so I can see what people are writing? So Reliquar and Praxa, I assume these are the latest questions being posted. If anyone after these two can just confirm that when I scroll to the top and it's cropped off a lot of stuff, if one of your burning questions was in that section that YouTube's just decided to gobble up, please repeat your question. I do not want to miss any of the questions that you've got. I'm happy to answer them, but on this occasion, unless I can press another button, it looks like the first question in the universe for the questions being asked was Leon's Max, which I presume is an answer to some earlier question has been confirmed. Yes, I own everything basically from 1999 onwards. So that's basic classic, as we'd call it, all the way through to the FPS creators, the 3D game makers, app game kits, GameGuru Classic, GameGuru MAX, all of it. TGC are focusing on being the #1 app developer and provider of driving apps, and have been #1 for 7 years, and very, very good at it. So it made perfect business sense for them to focus on that, and I absolutely 100% agree. David Hawkins, I'm part of the dev team, and this isn't a rebrand but a brand new company dedicated to Macs. Absolutely. T-Bird Lee and TZ were already synonymous. He called the shots because it was his company. Right. Not really. It was my company in the early years. You know, the early noughts. But I quickly realised to be successful in business, you surround yourself with successful and clever people. And so I built a management team and then a development team around them. And it was not a solo effort. A lot of the success of TGC, in fact most of the success of TGC, was the team effort and everybody who was involved. Which is why there's a certain feeling of freedom I have when you go back to like a one-man band, and I started off doing game making tools and I ended up just doing game making tools. So there's a freedom there. Okay, let's see. Look for a question mark. Who owns TGC then? The directors of TGC, there are 4 of them and I'm one of them. So they own TGC and I own TGC. So the owner structure has just been shuffled around so that I can focus on game makers, which should be great news for anyone who wants me working on game makers. Alright, is there any chance of you guys ever being able to implant fab into GameGuru MAX? And now you're going to bring back sliders for roughness and metallic in the materials section. Roughness and metallic, if it's disappearing, it's a bug or it's a feature. You might want to put that on the issues board. We'll investigate, because we are looking at, and we've been changing recently, the material system of objects for the better, I assure you. But if you're finding some weird nuance, let us know in the issues board. We'll fix that for you. And going back to your first point about implanting what used to be called Sketchfab, we did integrate into GameGuru MAX. Then Epic bought Sketchfab, closed Sketchfab down, changed some stuff, and now it's the Fab store via Epic. And it's a really good store, lots of cool assets, perhaps a little overpriced. I like the idea of the bundles that they're doing, but when you look at how the bundle's made up, like one object is $150 for like one building or something. It's like, yikes, really? Do people want to pay that kind of money? So maybe it kind of balances out. Maybe it's targeted more to the prosumer or professional developers. I don't know. I've not looked at it that much. But yes, I would like to make it easier for you to find stuff on places like the Fab Store and get them into Max, get them into your level making process as intuitively as possible. So keep an eye out for that, because I have been looking at that myself. How can we make that process quicker and easier? Okay, yes, who owns TGC then if not Lee? Well, we've answered that. Everybody owns TGC. Did you other things besides Max, like educational stuff? Yeah, absolutely. We remember TGC's 1999. We got a lot done in 25 years. But eventually we settled on what the market told us we were extremely good at, and that was also in part thanks to an excellent publisher cooperation to put out the #1 app for teach people how to pass their theory test. And that's now going to be extended to help people pass their practical test, and also to help instructors communicate and share resources with their students. So it'll be going from strength to strength, and hopefully we'll have another 7 years at #1 on the Apple and the Google Store. So yes, TGC have done a lot of different things, and the latest things that they're doing very well at is the driving apps, and you only have to go out to the Apple Store to find that. Okay, not quite. How many people work on Max now? So how many people work on Max now? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, if you were talking about like official people, just me. No, just me. But if you're talking about the community, I can't count them. There's too many. It really has become a community effort. In fact, I read one Steam review who said that was a bad thing. It's like, oh, the community's doing all of the work now. And it's like, but isn't that a good thing? That we've got an engine that you can contribute to and improve upon. And in fact, the Scott Tanner documentary kind of pointed in that direction, that include the community in the development work. And yet someone managed to think of it as a negative thing. So yeah, right now it's just little old me, but little old me full time. And you'll find that's quite a lot of Lee to go around. So don't worry. You're going to see more progress in the next 2 years than you've seen in the last 2 years. Okay, what matters is blah, 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 from the development team to do more useful to create awesome. Exactly as I just hinted. That was nicely paraphrased. Lol. It was formerly called Business Software Limited before they changed the name to GGC. That is very true. Okay. Oh, is Rick here? Good to see the stream going well. Hi to everyone. Hi, Rick. Yes, the stream is going very well now. It's going absolutely horribly disastrous for the first 20 minutes. For anyone who doesn't know, Rick is a fellow director of TGC. He's on holiday right now, and he shouldn't be in our chat. Sorry, Rick, you're not allowed. Bugger off. No, I was only joking. You're most welcome, Rick. Maybe the 12th of June did get bigged up a bit, and you have every right to be here to see me bad-mouthing you behind your back. Oh my god. I hope he's not chopped off more chat. Yep, looks like it has. Don't you just love live chat? If you actually accidentally let the scroll bar go to the bottom, it eats every chat before a certain point. So all the hello Ricks, yeah, all the hello Ricks have gone. All right, new rule, everyone. If you asked a question and you were patiently waiting for an answer, then Lee fumbled the scroll bar and your message was eaten, then, I think it probably didn't eat too much. Then don't be afraid to ask your question again. People often repeat and duplicate their questions, so it doesn't get ignored. So feel free to do that. So yeah, see if we can get to a question. Probably the first question with a question mark and a question at the start from Jackson JH. Are there a low poly option in the terrain editor, and will I be able to make a survival game? No, the biomes do not include a low poly terrain option. The only option you have if you want to create a low poly terrain is to use Preben's easy terrain generator that is on his Patreon page. And that lets you create a terrain very quickly, and it looks like low poly, and you can import it into Max and then use that as the basis of your level on which you can create your low poly games. Not excluding the idea of adding low poly as to one of the biomes in the terrain generator. If you think that's a good idea, put it in the issues board as a feature request. But yes, that exists, but you go check out Plemsoft on his Patreon page, and you'll find out about that. He's posted some really nice videos which shows you how it's used. And if you like the look of it, feel free to become a Patreon member. Okay, Wicked is nothing like Max Wicked. Upgrade is great. Great, I agree. Not guaranteed to happen though. No guarantees. Tentatively excited. Monkey noises. Wicked new. Well, okay, so that's gone down quite well. So more important than anything is the rocket icon being changed. Yeah, that's the real big news, actually. We've changed the back arrow to a stick arrow, and we've replaced the rocket with a play button. We actually cast a little vote. I don't know where the vote was. I think it was on Discord. I can't remember who won the vote in the end, but I don't know. Preben took the initiative, and next time I logged on, there was a different icon, which I think looks quite good. Let me know if I'm terribly wrong. We should put the rocket back, and we don't need to hold on sentiment. Put the rocket. If it makes the software look childish, maybe we should get rid of the rocket forever, or maybe we have it in the settings. Give me my rocket back. I'm the rocket man. Okay, is it possible DirectX 12 to GG Max in 2026? Not a clue. Not a clue. I'd like to think so. If I've still not got something deliverable in 2026, I'm definitely slowing down in my old age. But you could argue that all the game engine work's been done and all the graphics engine stuff's been done. The only remaining work is to glue the two things together. So really the time estimate is that glue and how long it takes to set. Texture streaming, yes, I know. When you see it in action, you realise just how powerful it is. It basically means you can run up to a wall with like 8,000 by 8,000 pixels, and you can keep that kind of detail throughout your level, and the only limitation is how much disk space you've got to store all your textures. It does not affect the rendering time and your 60 FPS rate. It's a really nice feature. If you watch the latest the Unreal announcement, they've introduced something called geometry streaming, which is sort of, I'd say, the next thing after texture streaming. So you can literally have millions and millions and millions of polygons in your level, and your performance doesn't break a sweat because it's not actually using all of them polygons right now. It just streams them in when you get a little bit closer to the object. But we'll be perfectly happy with texture streaming because that's the only thing that's creating a lot of stutter on large levels right now. We've solved the speed of the individual logic script calls. Those are pretty quick now, and we've added a little profiler that if a script gets out of control and starts taking too much cycles, it pops up and lets you know that's doing bad things, and you can go in and improve the script. Okay, Necrin wants the rocket icon back. Well, we'll just have to have an argument over that, won't we? Okay, more icons. Hello, la la la. I think what happens is I'm accidentally holding in the left mouse button all the time, and if I accidentally press the right mouse button, it resets the scroll bar to the end. So I've got my little middle finger hovering in the air. It's quite uncomfortable. Okay, question mark. Will it cost us more dollars? No, it won't. If you've got GameGuru MAX in your Steam library, it won't cost you a penny, will it? It's an upgrade. On Multiplayer Rocket, more than happy to sub for it. Here's a question from Morebot Gaming. When will we get the ability to use the low-res textures without any soft filtering? I got here late. No, that's fine. We haven't answered that question yet. I think what you're talking about is, in order to achieve the perfectly good World of Warcraft or low poly game feel, you want to switch off on trilinear texture filtering, and so your massive texels have nice crisp edges. It's literally a line of code, really, to switch off filtering on your textures. It's just not really a feature that's been added. So if you want to add that to the issues board, the DirectX 11 version could do that, and certainly the DirectX 12 one can as well. But it needs to get votes, not in terms of a voting board, we'll never bring that back, but certainly get support from a couple of community members, maybe a couple who are working on low poly games, and switching that filtering mode off would be like super beneficial in order to create a nicer looking low poly game. Here's a question from Retro Game Bloke. So Max will stay as is, and we can expect a DX12 update in 6 months or so. I don't say 6 months, I don't say 3 months, I don't say 6 years. But yes, I'm going to prototype a DX12 update, and if everything goes nice and smooth, you'll get that update for GameGuru MAX. But as I know from GameGuru Classic, it won't replace DirectX 11, because a lot of people will want to stay on DirectX 11 for years. So effectively, it's just like Classic. You can stay on Classic for years, you can stay on DX11 for years, or you can grab the latest, most broken version, which will be the DirectX 12, as we continually pour in new features, break things along the way, and then eventually it will start to stabilize. So it's really pick your poison. But yeah, I already know that the DX11 version will continue to receive bug fixes. It will continue to have a place in everyone's heart. And just because there's a DirectX 12 version doesn't mean people will automatically migrate across to it. That's just something that happens. Okay, on GitHub, you mentioned you were bringing the legendary segment editor back. Are there any news updates regarding that? Is there a release date? Okay, I'd say for the next year. Don't ask me for release dates. I'm in prototyping mode, which means I'm in supremely creative. Lee just keeps throwing it away and starting again. And in that environment, you can't really give anyone a deadline or a date of delivery. But you will be able to see the progress and just see how many steps forward, how many steps back are actually happening. But specifically, in terms of the segment editor, it was a really good feature, wasn't it? It was simple. It was stupidly simple, but widely popular, extremely popular. And it's not even that complicated as a concept. The idea that rather than plonking it one tile at a time down, you can keep your left mouse button held down and paint a lot of tiles. And you only put a tile down if there's a space available on the grid. And then the right mouse button deletes the tiles. And thus you have painting rooms and corridors. So yeah, I am thinking about that too. I don't think everyone needs to wait till DirectX 12 for a feature like that. I think with some expansion of the new grid system that you're going to see in the next, I'd say, 6 weeks, it could be we simply extend the grid system to have some of the better features of the segment editor. Certainly not going to be creating it like for like. Remember, FPS Creator is going back way, way back. Can you imagine what improvements they've done since the days of CSG? So we'd have to have some thinking about those sorts of additional features. But certainly the idea of painting rooms and corridors like extremely quickly, that could even be part of the grid system that you're going to see, as I said, in the next 3 to 6 weeks. Oh, 3 to 6 weeks? I give you an estimate. I give you a date. Sorry about that. Ignore me. Okay, Preben's refined workshop while he's over the warehouse that keeps floating and lifting up. Yeah, that's about right. Lee likes explosions. VR currently in GameGuru MAX is marked down as an experimental feature. That means I wouldn't recommend using it in any production work. It's great to be able to stick a headset on and run around a level like you've made, but it's a far cry from a fully fledged, feature-rich VR experience. And I wouldn't dream of using the VR features of GameGuru MAX and then turning around and trying to sell it as a VR game. VR is a whole class of game genre, which is why it will remain experimental for the moment. I'd like to see what the community think. Does VR trump DirectX 12? There's a question for you. Do we postpone upgrading to DirectX 12 and finish off all of the VR features that allow you to make a full VR game in GameGuru MAX DirectX 11? There's a question for the community. Necrim never leaving. Okay, well that's up to Necrim. If you have a game on GameGuru MAX DirectX 11, your game will break after DirectX 12 upgrade. Like all things, there are going to be forwards and backwards compatibility facts. You know, there clearly will be differences. DirectX 12 is a completely different architecture for rendering, so your graphics are going to look different for one. Maybe there's some new techniques, some new data storage that DirectX 12 can take advantage of that can't be loaded back into DirectX 11. So there's a one-directional system already before we've even started. If you remember when we went from Classic to Max, that was a bigger shift because that was like an almost complete rewrite towards the end, to such a degree that the character creator in Classic was entirely and fundamentally different in how it works and how it produced characters than what we got in GameGuru MAX, when we realised having it all as a single geometry and blending those body parts together was a smarter, cleverer way than what Classic did, which would literally have the head floating in place above the neck in the hopes no one would notice there's a great big gap between the neck and the head. So the Classic and Max was a big gap. The gap between DirectX 11 and DirectX 12 will be a much smaller gap, but it'll not be zero gap. That never happens with such a seismic shift in technology. You're always going to gain stuff, you're also going to lose stuff. But the hope is, if you are going to lose anything between DirectX 11 and 12, it's worth losing, because you're just going to be able to replace it with something even better that DirectX 12 provides. I know it's a vague answer, but really that's what the prototype's about, to find out what's the answer to that question. How much will we lose? Do we have to sacrifice anything? Do we have to sacrifice a lot? Can't you just make low res textures in the first place? You could, but then you still get the texture filtering, so you'll still see that smoothness between the texels. There's a feature in the graphics pipeline where you can just switch off filtering, and it's really sharp edges no matter the resolution of your texture. Okay, question from Spicy Sausage. How do you see this new structure affecting timelines for updates or feature additions? Anything you're working on that benefits from this new structure, I assume you mean. Affecting timelines for updates. I'm sticking to the 4 updates a year. I think that works really well. Tying in with 4 live Q&As a year as well. So we'll push out the update and we'll do a Q&A around the same time so we can talk about it and showcase it if anyone wants to see some shiny new features in the updates. That gives people a nice clock. 4 updates per year. Expectations met, right? So I'm okay with that. Absolutely no, and you've already seen it, that the dev tests is updated basically every other day. So you'll always get the latest updates if you want them, but if you don't want to be the guinea pigs and you just want stable versions that won't keep breaking your game, then you'll get 4 of those a year, 1 every quarter. So that timeline I'm quite happy to work to, and I think it's very workable for the size of team. And anything new that's being worked on, well, that'll fit within that, because 4 updates isn't too challenging. It gives us a lot of wiggle room to work on lots of other things and then decide, does that go in the update, or is that not ready for prime time, and we keep it back and keep working on it and playing with it until we think it is right. But yeah, 4-quarter, a release each quarter with a live Q&A, I think would fit the bill. And of course, all the announcements and things that we're doing, if there were there, we put them out on Steam announcements and announce them also on Discord as well. From now on, please follow the format. Question, at least spotted. That would certainly help, David. Thank you very much. So you basically said Max is not a profitable engine, and that any further development is basically fun as a hobby? Question mark. It depends. It's a profitable engine if you was a field mouse, then you'd be able to eat. Is it a profitable engine if you're running a mighty developer and publisher company? No, not at all. So in the new structure, it's break even, right? It'll pay the bills. It will run the development for as long as the revenue stays at its current level. That's how it's been structured. So basically it's a infinity model. And because I can be entirely focused on this, you'll actually get more bang for your buck in terms of what you see in terms of game development, productivity and progress. And it's really up to us as, well, me really, and then of course our excellent contributors, and then our community to take what we've got, which has great promise, and turn it into a great product, which shows great profit. Because with great profit comes more coders, more artists, more developers to big it up even more. And then maybe one day it will be profitable at the level of, say, you could run a business from it. But right now, this is a creative endeavor. We're doing it to make the product great, not to try and squeeze a business out of it. Because as I said, if you was this was your these products were your only income, your business would have gone bankrupt by now. So yeah, we've restructured in order to make that revenue that is coming in work well for what we all want, which of course is a great product. Okay, have I scrolled myself out of... Yeah, I think I'm still okay. Sounds like a great leap forward in performance improvements. Oh yeah, we like performance. It's just that when you're fixing crashy, nasty bugs, you never get to focus on the good stuff like making things faster. And we've had to have some time to do that. It was great, especially on the logic side too. Okay, let's see. We've got a question. This is from Reliquy. How long do you anticipate DX1 Wicked update to take? I'm going to translate that. How long do you anticipate DirectX 12 the Wicked update to take? I haven't a clue. Could be 6 years, 6 minutes. Not 6 minutes, 6 weeks, I don't know. It'll take some time. Ask me at the end of the year. You can't pin me down, I'm sorry. Praxar question. So 3 things I've been wondering about and one I think may be a bug. How's the projectile system coming along? I can answer that now. I got this sort of coming in. So projectile systems never work. In the latest version, go and have a look for the RPG. I nicked it from Classic, dropped it into Max, made it work. So if you go and drop a start marker in, scroll through the player's weapons, you'll see RPG, test game, fire, rocket launcher. You have your projectile system working. Number 2, I heard from Necron that 3D models for HUDs are being worked on at the moment. 3D models for HUDs. Not a clue about that. Doesn't ring a bell. Maybe it got lost in translation. We are working on HUDs, but more about making them more useful so you can have secondary alternative HUDs pop up for different purposes within your game. But having 3D models rendering around on top of a HUD, no, not sure about that. Sorry, Necrom, you're going to have to reply to that yourself in this chat. Here's a question from Craven Guru. With this change, are any features that were nor planned going to be reconsidered now? Third-person multiplayer. Will you stop talking about multiplayer? Although third-person, yeah, I think third-person has probably got its time now. I know I'm shocking everyone. Lee, your stock response is there are no plans to XYZ. Well, I'm unchained now. I'm unchained. So, in a way, I'm not going to say it's going to be done. I'm certainly going to tell you when it's going to be done. And I can certainly say that multiplayer is way down the road, if indeed we ever get to do something like that. But if you look at the, there's a script from Netcrim called NPC Control that's kind of already doing third person. It's only missing a few things to match what GameGuru Classic used to do with third person. So I'm no longer going to say there are no plans to do third person. What I'm going to say is I have plans to have a closer look at third person just to see what potential we can extract out of what already exists. And then get the litmus test from the community as to, is anyone using NPC Control? Is it still too difficult to use? Is there a quicker way or an easier way? Please let us know. So there you go. I've literally changed the script on third person. And as to ETC, I don't know. We'll see. It's cropped off, but no question in there. Question, are there any low poly options in the terrain editor? And will I be able to make a survival game? Two questions though. The first one was answered earlier. Will I be able to make a survival game? Sure. Yeah, some people are already working on survival games. Running up, chopping down a tree, collecting the wood, making a weapon, making weapon, go to a monster, hit overhead, collect gold. Yes, you can absolutely make that in today's GameGuru MAX. Okay, I think I've seen that one. Will it cost us dollars? New. Will DirectX 12 affect existing projects when implemented? See previous answer. Can't say without doing the prototype work. It will affect somewhat. To what degree? I don't know. Is it intended to do it on purpose? Absolutely not. We want some nice consistency as you migrate from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12 and only feel the benefits and not feel too many pain points in the migration from one to the other. Question from Craven Guru. Will Preben and Netcrim be part of DAO Basic Software, or will they still be contributed to Max development independently? Independently for now. As I said before, there's a big difference between, I call it hobby because I never feel like I really worked. I always felt like I was doing my hobby and sometimes I got paid for it. So right now I would call it a creative community endeavor where we focus on the product because we like the product and we want to see it succeed and we enjoy doing it. At some point, if that product starts to make more sales and gets more traction and gets more good press and all the things that a successful product needs, and of course then the revenue comes in, then we can afford to start calling it a business and start hiring team members full time. But we're far from that. In fact, the stats suggest it's getting increasingly difficult to sell into the game making space with so many free options out there. And you try and build a business on a product that you have to give away. Good luck with that. I haven't figured it out. Maybe you have. Okay, Spicy Sausage. Any plans with any of the older software you now own again? Not at the moment. The only plan I've got is to make sure that people don't forget about them. So all of the websites, some of them don't even go anywhere. They just land in a holding pattern. There's at least one web page which just talks about that product, maybe shows a picture of the box and then a little description as to what it was and who it catered for and when it was developed and how long it sold for and things like that. I'd like to see that just to show the sort of the legacy and the pedigree of how we got to our product today from where we started. But these are old products, and in some respects, like programming languages, who knows, in 5 years time we not even be programmers, we might just be prompt engineers and the AI does all the coding. So bringing back a basic language might not really fit into the modern world. And I think we'll all agree we've got our work cut out getting GameGuru MAX to be a great product. And with a small team, then we have to choose our battles, and I choose Max. Okay, question next. Lee, do you have anything that can show us about DirectX 12 version? Just asking. I have nothing, but if you go to thewickedengine.net, check out the last 50 videos. After you've picked your jaw off the floor, you'll get an idea of why I'm so excited to check it out and see if the prototype can yield some benefits for us. Perhaps our third question. I keep having problems with bringing videos into the storyboard editor. It doesn't seem to like me placing it after the splash board, and before the title screen. Is this a limitation or a bug? Yeah, I've never tried to stick a video after the splash screen and before the title screen. It could well be a bug. If you could document that and put it in the issues board such that I can reproduce it quickly, then yeah, if it's a bug and it's doing nasty things, we can get that fixed pretty quickly. And now we've got less than 10 bugs. You'll have a lot of attention on anything you put in the issues board. Should get fixed quite quickly. And yes, you can quote me on that. Okay, no problem. Happy to answer questions. Another bonus question. Any info on HUDs being slaved to models, Halo, assault rifle, It's a good idea. We've already started having it so you can actually have an in-game HUD that's active even whilst you're holding the weapon and firing it. In fact, there's a trigger, there's a script where as soon as it detects that you've shot the weapon, it brings up the alternative in-game HUD, which looks quite cool. Won't be a large stretch to take that one step further, and what kind of weapon you're firing at the time could bring up a specific kind of HUD, just a more sophisticated condition. Talk to Necrom about that. It's quite a nice idea. Okay, Craven Guru Lee, will DirectX Software Limited, we are very limited around here, be bringing back game making competitions for the community with prizes? They were a lot of fun on the old TGC forums. Yeah, back when you could sell a game making product. Yeah, we don't have any money for prizes right now. We could give you kudos and virtual icons, but physical prizes or vouchers and things, we're going to have to wait until we can once again find a way to monetize on game making product. But yeah, I did like the idea of the competitions. It really they acted as like hallmarks for how good the tool was. You know, if no one entered anything into the competition, it meant the tool wasn't ready. If you got a lot of really good games, you knew you was getting close to the mark. So yeah, I'd like to see competitions, but prizes, well, we'll have to talk about prizes when we have some coffers to distribute. Have I done it again? I haven't. My left finger is really aching off. If I could just hold the scroll bar at a point and just leave it there, that would be really nice. Here we go. I'll put that there and let go. Okay, so yeah, I think prizes and competitions are very cool. Let's not just dismiss it out of hand. Let's talk about it on Discord. Maybe we don't have to go into lavish and luxurious prizes. Maybe kudos is enough. But of course, I imagine everyone will want me working on my prototypes and not organising competitions. However, if anybody wanted to organise competitions as a contribution within the community, that would be great. Yeah, you'll get a lot of that perhaps in future live broadcasts. The begging ball will come out to ask for help to build this product. Okay, any plans for all the old software that you now own? I think that was probably a repeater question. Hopefully I've answered it. Fab's pretty good for prosumers more than anything. Yeah, I agree. Fabs is very much a prosumer. In fact, the whole Unreal Engine is kind of pointing towards not just the prosumer but the ultra elite AAA developer. Unfortunately, when you take that stance, you can leave certain indies way behind. You don't really have that kind of structure in order to create a game like Witcher 3, for example. So they have to tread carefully to not alienate their indie community as they create more AAA features within the engine. It's great having them, but you got to fill it all up with content, right? It's like, oh, I've got AAA features. Well, now, next step, create a AAA game and see how long it'll take you. Right, and check for a new tick box that allows you to read the FPE and change the settings. If you untick it, you'll have access to the sliders. Oh, that's answering an earlier question. Yeah, really cool feature from Preben there. So, and in collaboration with Old Flack and a few others, were some content creators just like to change the FPE file that directs the settings for an object. But sometimes that object is spread across the level, like 35,000 instances of an object. And what if then you wanted to change the emissive colour or change another value? You don't have to go through all 35,000 in the thing. Well, now what you can do is just say, for that object, I want you always to read the parent settings in the FPE. So when you change the FPE, and you could actually be in the level at the time, as soon as you change the FPE and press save, and then Alt-Tab back to GameGuru MAX, boom! Instantaneously all the objects update with that new setting. Very, very cool. And that's available in the update that went out earlier today. Okay, and a question further down may not be a question at all. Praxa, honestly, the community is what makes GameGuru MAX stand out. The community made me fall in love with Max all the more. Nothing quite like it else throughout the... Yeah, I like to say we have the oldest game making community on the internet. Make of that what you will. Some people might say, well, you add up all the ages of all the contributors to GameGuru MAX, we are the oldest game making community out there. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Okay, these questions might start repeating from the last time YouTube gobbled up half our questions. Here's a question, another question from Spicy Sausage. We're all at the end as we processed the news. And then a redaction. Retro Game Bloke. So, what are your main aims with the new Wicked Engine version, beyond getting it working, of course? Third person easier, for example. I think my aim is stability and performance and longevity, right? So I'm not interested in adding like new features that aren't already inside the latest version of the Wicked Engine. The reason is there's so many new features in the Wicked Engine. It would take us like another year just to expose them all inside the GameGuru UI environment. So there's no real need to invent some new shiny features. But that's down the road. Stage 1, is it even possible? Right? Are there going to be obstacles we don't know about yet that would just stop us in our tracks? An example, let's say you've done a really nice terrain, trees and grass, paths, a town. And remember, that's all custom shaders in DirectX 11. We have to throw all of that. Terrain, trees and grass away. And then the DirectX 12 version comes along with a different procedural terrain, different trees and the way they are rendered, and different grass and the way they are drawn. Right? Does that mess up your game? I mean, the grass is now inside your buildings, or is the trees poking through your roof, or does the terrain, the procedural terrain, get cut off when you didn't want it cut off? All those sorts of things now kind of pop up. And so just solving them, I think, is stage 1. But if we can get it so you're in DirectX 12, if there were some losses you don't really mind, and then you can carry on, I think that will be the first goal. After that, I think then exposing lots of cool features that are hiding in the Wicked Engine. And then third, what can we do with our newfangled DirectX 12 engine? I think that's probably the right order of doing things. Only this time, let's try and do it without introducing too many bugs. I think at one point we was over 500 bug reports in GameGuru MAX. Now sure, we were still heavy in development, but those were public-facing bugs. That was a ridiculous statistic to show everyone. Should never have been in the market if it had 500 known bugs in it. And so let's make sure we don't have 500 bugs in the future, shall we? I think that would be a good philosophy to instill. So when you see a new feature, don't ask for the next new feature. Ask yourself, how many bugs have you introduced with that one feature, and please can you fix them first? Okay, I can scroll and let go, and I shouldn't have to lose my place. Yeah, that seemed to work. Martin Oliver, when you start on the segment editor, I haven't said I'm going to start on the segment editor, I said there's a possibility we could add it to the grid system. Just to be clear here, you know, not walking into that one. Will you add back little segment importer written in basic? I have some ideas to improve on it from the first since null space isn't an issue anymore. Yikes, you're going back a long way. I didn't even think basic had any hand in the segment editor, but you might be right. You got a better memory than me. But yeah, I'm not planning on recreating a segment editor. I think it doesn't pay to be nostalgic to that degree where you're recreating stuff from 20 years ago. However, we will look at the segment editor and say, why was it so special? Which parts of the segment editor would really benefit GameGuru MAX? We'll approach it from that position. But yeah, if you've got anything along the lines of that was a really good idea and you should totally get that into GameGuru MAX, issues board as a feature request, and then send me the link, and so I can read it in all your glorious detail. Okay, question from Blood Moon Interactive. Hi Blood Moon Interactive, welcome. Welcome to our crazy broadcast. I just got home. What did I miss? Quite a lot. It'll be on YouTube later after I've done some streaming edits, and you'll be able to hear it all again. But if you've just joined now, you missed quite a lot. Quite a lot, actually. But you'll get it all now. You recording, like I said. Okay. Kill the rocket. Okay. God has spoken. Extreme Strategy Showcase question. With the commander behavior for AIs, you mentioned previously in the stream, will the player eventually be able to command their own troops? Never thought that far ahead. The commander I always thought as an enemy director, really, of things like flank lines and whether they're advancing or retreating, providing cover fire, and different troops could have different specialities, like one might be the Rocketeer, Grenadier, planting mines, or whatever it is, and the commander can direct that in such a way that the player really gets inconvenienced trying to make any advance. Having a commander for the allies, in a way you could kind of go that far, because the only difference between an ally and an enemy is who they're attacking. So if you set an ally commander against an enemy commander, you can sit back and watch them go nuts fighting each other. But the player itself, the you, with the keyboard and the mouse and the gamepad or whatever, not sure. Not really thought that far ahead. And I'm not even sure if it would work. I'm sure it is. I'm sure there's a lot of games, real-time strategies, where that's all you do. It's only commander level interactions. But that might be down the road when we are talking about real-time strategy as another genre for GameGuru MAX. Indiana Bravo Foxtrot. IBF. Not GG Max related, but what is the future of AGK Studio? Any 3D editor plans? There's no 3D editor plans, I can tell you that pretty categorically. The future of AGK Studio is to do a couple more updates. At the moment we're right at the end of operating system discontinuation, so we're sitting on APIs that are soon to be discontinued, which means you won't be able to put your apps on the app stores for Apple and Google. So we are going to fix those, put you on the new operating system, so you've got years of longevity in the version of App Game Studio that you'll need if you've got a project that that's in progress, or a project you've already released and you need to have the tools to maintain it. However, as you could probably guess with the theme of this broadcast, certainly me personally, I'm going to put all my energies into GameGuru MAX. I think that's the smart move. The good news is you are not alone. The AppGameKit Studio repository has a contributor who's very kindly learning it faster than I can. Because remember, I didn't write AppGameKit, the later versions certainly didn't write AppGameKit Studio. And so I inherited, a couple of million lines of code on a cross-platform games engine, and I was just struggling to sort of get things to just about work. And of course, when they start changing the requirements for Google payments and new authentications and dropping old features, all that needs to be maintained. It's a lot of work. And as I've said, the revenues on game making has been dropping over the years, and especially at GameKit, as more people turn to more modern programming languages to get more done quicker. And that's just the reality of the situation. So it will always be on GitHub as something that you can get access to. It will have some more updates so you can continue to use it and put your apps on the store, but that won't be a situation that goes on forever. The writing may be on the wall, and at some point AppGameKit Studio will have its last update, and then we'll go into the same realm as, say, AppGameKit Classic. But Classic had 10 years. You bought Classic about 11 years ago. You got 9 years of free updates, which is pretty good for a product. And similar with AppGameKit Studio. So Yeah, those are the facts right now, but I'm absolutely happy. If anyone wants to come along and wants to help out with that repository and keep that source code up to date, then get in touch. We have precious few volunteers who want to manage and maintain a cross-platform programming language these days. Yeah, not easy, but not impossible. Not impossible. Paul Walker asks, will there be any improvements with physics in Max moving forward? Great question, and I have a great answer. We're going to continue to use the Bullet physics engine for the DirectX 11 version of GameGuru MAX, but I wouldn't say we're going to be forced to, but it makes perfect sense to adopt the physics engine that the latest Wicked engine uses, which is something called Jolt. I think it's Jolt, yes. Jolt physics, written from the ground up to be multi-platform, multi-threaded, extremely fast, does water buoyancy properly, and everything else that you might want from a super fast AAA game physics system. And Wicked Engine has already implemented and done all the hard work. So that's probably what's going to happen. So because it's Newtonian physics, you shouldn't notice any difference in the speed of gravity, the feeling of friction, and all the rest of it. All you'll see is, oh, it does more things now. I throw a barrel into the water and it actually acts as if the barrel's floating on top of the water and you can jump on the barrel. I mean, you can do that with Max now, but it's a bit of a fudged buoyancy instead of being real physics buoyancy. And I dare say there's a whole host of other things that have been introduced. I know for a fact things like inverse kinematics tied with physics, that'll be supremely useful. Again, we'll have this big toolbox full of cool things to play with, then we get to decide how we click them together into stuff that GameGuru MAX users would enjoy using. So yeah, physics is going to get moved on for DirectX 12, unless the prototype phase says, no, you can't have Jolt, go back to Bullet for whatever reason. Remember, we are marrying an old games engine with a new graphics engine. It can throw up a lot of question marks and roadblocks. Looking forward to seeing how DirectX 12 transition goes. Me too, me too. Retro Game Blog, will we get a progress blog, as Max did, or occasional silly test videos? Progress blog, as Max did. Okay, yeah, I mean, if you go back far enough, it was like one of the original dev blogs or vlogs or whatever you call it. In fact, I can take blogging so far back, I used to write physical letters and send them out as a form of blog, if you can believe it. Blogging before the internet blogging. I did enjoy the early blogging. As it got, say, in the last 10 years, and as game making was more of a business for us, we had to make sure that what we put out was spell checked, used proper English, and didn't waffle, as Lee tends to do. And so had a lot more editorship around all the announcements that we did. With Dirt Basic Software Limited, I don't, because it's not a business as such anymore, I do not feel inclined to put that amount of scrutiny. I'm happy to let the occasional typo go out now and maybe have a bit of a waffle on any subjects that I find interesting and want to talk about endlessly. And so yeah, you might find that we'll start to see some of those progress blogs materialize as I'm working through the prototyping process. In what format that takes, I haven't decided yet. It could just be Steam announcements, but those are quite separate and islandy, and maybe that should be used for something else. Discord, I don't really want to sort of disrupt this idea that Discord is more of a conversation engine where you can just go in and catch up and then add your own comments. So it has to be some kind of blog format. I just haven't figured out what delivery mechanism that might be. It could even be something like Patreon, where that has that sort of that blog style about it, and then you can go in if you're a recent member, but the blogs, the Patreon's been running for a year. You can go back in history and read all the early blogs from blog 1 onwards, or it could be some sort of YouTube. I don't know if you get a channel inside a YouTube channel. I don't know, but something like that. And doesn't necessarily be a video one. I like the idea of just rattling it out on a keyboard, throwing in a couple of screenshots. So as I say, I kind of have an idea. I'd like to tell people the progress in the form of a blog, vlog, whatever log, but I haven't figured out what the format of that is yet, and I'm happy to discuss that on Discord as well. Okay, anything else question related? Everyone's doing DX12 is greater than... Oh! The votes are in! DX12 is greater than VR, 12 greater than VR, 12, 12, 12, 12. Tum says VR first. Well, at least VR gets 2 votes. Looking for Studios. No, do not under any circumstances delay DX12 newest Wicked. Okay, maybe that was a loaded vote. I kind of knew which way the public would swing. But there you go. It's not me. It's the universe. Visual 7. New weapon. Will new weapon creation be streamlined? It's a good question. It certainly has there's the potential, isn't there, to have something that makes weapon making easier. Right now you can do it, but you've got to either go into Notepad and then write out all your text files in a very specific way and collect a lot of technical art together in order to create your new weapon in the new weapon system. You also have help from a tool that Preben created on his Patreon site, so you can go there, you can find out how he's made that process of creating weapons easier as well, with some other features you literally couldn't do in Notepad, but you can do with his tool. But I guess you're asking for like similar to the character creator in Max, where you literally just click an icon, click a menu item, grab from a load of barrels, butts, triggers, effects, damage, name, texture, style, whatever, and then press a button and you've made a weapon. You drop it in your level, collect it, run around and do things. That's a big job, as you can imagine in the description. There's a lot of work there, and I would argue there's more important work to put ahead of that. But secretly I've always liked the idea of something called the weapon maker. It's just a lot of work. In fact, you could argue it's a whole product all by itself. You are quite welcome to write one if you like. You'll get my official support. It's a lot of work though, I think, to do it and do it in such a way that it's intuitive for everyone. Right, let's see. Okay, I've not lost my place. That is good. And we're here with Reliquar. Sorry, I'm probably never pronouncing your name. Reliquar. Yeah. What do you want with the rocket? I have custom images for the UI, so for me it stays. Yes, just in case anyone wants to know this, you can actually go into Max and change all the icons to whatever you want. If you want to really customize your game maker, you can have. If you know where the folder is, you can totally do that. Just be aware that if you do that and then an update comes out and verify files on Steam, it wipes out your icons, puts the original ones back in. Question from Twizzle. Is there any way to make ally NPCs invincible? Or is setting their health to 9999 the only way to keep them from dying? I don't want the player killing important story characters. Set it to 99999. Right? 1 off 100,000. Yeah. That will actually be the same as invincible flag that the player can have. So you do 5 9s and your ally is invincible. Or your story character is invincible. But even at 9999, that's one hell of a weapon to kill one of your story characters. Unless it's like amongst a lot of exploding barrels. Best way to load a 3 level in App Game Kit. App Game Kit. That's a good question because it's not my forte, as you can imagine. I've just dipped in briefly to fix the most urgent of bad things in in App Game Kit and then get it out there as an update. I do recall there was GG Loader, but I think that was for App Game Kit Classic. That's now been discontinued. But I'd say that the GG Loader was the predominant way to get your GameGuru levels into App Game Kit. But you're going to have to dredge out products that don't even exist anymore in order to create that. The only other way is to do what GG Loader did, which is to take the FPM, extract all the data, meticulously convert it all to something that GameKit can read. It's a lot of technical stuff to get that, but it's certainly possible. If you want to put the work in, and feel free to drop a question or two on Discord. I think App GameKit has, in fact I know, AppGameKit has the Discord channel, and now we've reduced all our social forum style things to mainly Discord. There'll be more eyeballs on those. So if you've got a question on the details of the data that GameGuru MAX exports, feel free to ask. Has the test level already changed from rocket? I still see a rocket on my Max. Great question. Let's have a look, shall we? Oh yeah, before I answer that, Tom, sorry about this. Yeah, the update that went out today, this is the new format, essentially, and I'll hold my hands in the air. Apart from some manual editing, this was written by AI, all of this. I had to do a lot of faffing around to extract all the commits for the last 3 months from the GitHub repo. And then AI was kind enough to create a summary that I could then edit, an intro and an outro, which gives you all of the things that have been worked on. I think it's nice. It managed to summarize them very well. It's quite an accurate depiction, but you don't have to read through like a gazillion lines of commits, and you get something in plain English that you can read through. And this will be the format for our quarterly updates. So the next one will be in December. No, I'm not. I'm wrong. March, June, September 2025 will be the next update. So that's what you'll be seeing here. So let me just answer that question from Tom. This was just released today. Of course it's going to crash. And we'll have to go into a project and a level to see what the icons look like. You'll already have noticed the stick arrow here, but yeah, you're right, in the latest version it's still the rocket, but it's doomed. It's a doomed rocket, because when I switched off the new features which pulls out the if I just show you this one here, grid and alignment settings, which should never have been here in the first place, is going to be moved out up here somewhere, and so you can always have access to your grid settings. As part of that work, we also changed this icon, and so when that moves, this changes, just so you know. That's the page you was on. Why am I showing you a boring web page? You may as well stay on that one. Do you want to see what this does, anyone? But hopefully that answers the question, Tom. It will be in the next dev test build. But if you like your rocket, you get to keep it for a bit longer. Now we're going to use the rocket one last time, and I'll show you what this is. So remember I said that the melee combat has been improved. Well, now you've actually got the ability that they can block and counter-attack. They can run away, they can get back up, they can group together. Allies have the same abilities as the enemies. So as you can see, they were on the floor and they were going to get back up again, but they knew that, and then give them a slap over the head, and of course, as they were trying to get up. So these are all my allies. These are my low poly allies. Don't worry, your eyes aren't going weird. I deliberately chose low poly so I could think more about logic and less about eye candy. So these are all of my allies, and those 6 goblins over there are all the enemies. So watch what happens. They'll try and attack me first, and then my allies kept showing up, and then they start attacking them, and eventually, so I got block. If we can time it right, that, time it, better than that, yeah, and then hit. And so if you can block and then counterattack within a certain amount of time, then they fall over, and then you can run up to them. And initially, I only did this for the player. And then I realised, you know what, with just a few extra animations and some more logic, the enemies can block and counterattack, and the allies can block and counterattack. And so you don't really see this in its best light, but at some point, if there's enough requests for it, I will actually just do a template which just shows the new improvements to the melee. Right now, it's kind of quite hidden. If I just show you the importer, character and animations, you'll actually see here you've now got melee, which has all of these extra animations, and then you've got specialized ones for like spear style weapons and axe style weapons, and things like that. So a lot of stuff going on in the background, but enabled with the behavior script. So melee attack builds into it with those new animations that I've just pointed to, all of that extra logic. So you don't really have to do anything. All you got to do is drop in a character, make sure they're using melee attack, and now they're just smarter at doing melee attacks. So that's something for you to check out. And as you saw, some of the distances are slightly weird. Like it gets hurt from a spear that's like half a mile away. It's like, well, you're not really contacting. But that's just, by the time the animation has played, the character has moved, and so the contact isn't physically, visually right. But in terms of the logic, it thinks, you know what, it counts as a hit. I mean, you'd see that if you were playing a multiplayer game where you've got the latency lag, where it's like, how could you possibly hit me? You was all the way over there, but the logic counts. You was there at some point, and so you're going to get hit. I digress. So yes, Max is going to keep the rocket for this public one and will be replaced in the very next dev test, and certainly the update in September. Or if there's a big cry for it, then we'll push out another public update and get rid of the rocket forever. Okay, question from Reliquy. I would be more than happy to sub Max. Do you think that would work? I don't know what sub Max is. Subvert? Subtract? Subscribe to? I don't know. But as I said, I really want to focus on the product and the creative aspects. Business kind of can take care of itself. If you're onto something that's good, this is what I found over the last 20 years. If you're creating something that's good, business takes care of itself. That comes along naturally. You only need to really push in business and stuff if the product's like mediocre and okay, and you kind of have to sell snow to the Eskimos in order to make it successful. But a product that's good, that finds its time, its place in its time in history, business kind of just takes care of itself. So that's what I'm probably going to do. Work on the product now, think about the business a little later. Ganja Academy. Is it now possible to create a realistic scene? I can say no before the end of the sentence. With NPCs, in the sense that when I start shooting on the streets, NPCs will start running and some will attack and so on. Thanks. Not in this June 2025 update. Yes, for the September 2025 update. Because I'm not showing you this now because I'm not quite ready to share any of it. But I already have that running. I already have characters that can find cover, peek their head above, fire, fire, fire. If you get too close to them or they're uncomfortable, they break cover and find better cover. There's a cover zone system that's really smart and automatically figures out all the cover points based on particular angles. And of course, I'm going to extend that to not just hiding behind a sandbag, but hiding around a corner, moving slowly backwards into a cover position, as you might have seen in the early Half-Life AI logic systems. And as I said, a commander structure, so you can actually have a coordinated effort amongst multiple enemy units. And so the September update will have that in. As you can see, it's the perfect example of, even though I'm going to step back for prototyping, I still have both hands fully inside the GameGuru MAX DirectX 11 because these features are needed, right? There's I counted them actually. After early access, we received 48. Is it 48? Yeah, 48 negative reviews on Steam, right? And I take each one very seriously, and a good chunk of them were about the AI, specifically how characters react in a gameplay setting. And the conclusion is they don't react very well at all. And so that's something that I am personally invested in correcting as part of making sure that the product stands very well in its own two DirectX 11 legs. And so yeah, keep an eye out for that. I'm sure it'll be in the dev tests. It will be in the dev tests. You won't have to wait till September. Just keep an eye out on the Discord announcements, and as soon as the dev test goes out, you can have a play with it and see if you like it, it hits the mark, or you'd like to see more improvements. And I actually do welcome the feedback, because right now it's only a very few people have actually seen this new AI work that has been added. Retro Game Bloke, any examples of how wicked DX12 has advantages of DirectX 11? Biggest ones you're excited to use? Well, I've already mentioned texture streaming, simply because it solved a preeminent problem in the DirectX 11 architecture that wouldn't have been easy to solve. I was never really excited about real-time rendering because you needed a really monster graphics card. But there's now this lovely sweet spot between, it's not real-time, like ray tracing real-time rendering, but it's like highly optimized traditional rendering techniques with the best bits of global illumination techniques to give you what kind of looks like ray-casted scenes, but at games performance. That I'm really excited about, because it really kind of takes your scene and it brings it up a notch. You know, I'll just give you an example. Quick example. Put in a light and a light up here, right? And you've got a light. I'm not doing this very well. This is not rehearsed, as you can imagine. Right, put play grid in it. See, stupid idea putting the grid there. Right, so light and light. Well, you get the idea. And right now you get lovely shadow. Look at that lovely shadow from that lovely light. Well, it's not indirect light. It's basically just a direct shadow. But what if that light, as it's coming down here, bounces off this little edge and then reflects this way, and then there's light that goes that way and bounces off this red wall that then shades that bit red because that light's changed colour to red and now bounces on the floor. This is a very simplistic example, by the way, but effectively what it means is when you drop a light in, it really feels like a light that's lighting that scene, rather than it just being an approximation as we've got used to try and get games to be fast. They've never really looked like in the right place. You know, you drop in an object. This is, you can tell this is completely impromptu. So you put in an object like that, right, and all you really get is that. You get a bit of a shadow and you get some sort of normal shading, and that's kind of it. But what you really wanted to see, there's less light over here than there is over here. So you would actually get some subtle differences in lighting just by dropping that palette up against that wall. If you move it out here, it would be shaded slightly differently. It's subtle as hell, but it works so well on a scene level. I didn't like it because it cost too much. You needed a lot of hardware and it was a lot of work. But now with the optimizations that I've seen in the Wicked engine, we get our cake and eat it. We can have that lovely light play going on. You don't have to do any extra work except, you know, you can still drop in the lights where you want them and set your light properties. But the scene just responds better and gives you more realistic lighting without sacrificing your game performance. In fact, you might even get a game performance improvement with a better looking scene in the exact scene between DirectX 11 and DirectX 12. So it's really exciting, and that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to. It basically lifts everyone's visuals without everyone having to do anything. You just get the benefit. And all of the shiny toys, that's just cherry on top. All the other stuff like, I don't know, motion blur, for example. I think we have motion blur in this version. It's just so subtle or non-existent that no one's ever found it. But if you look at some of these, say, Unreal demos, they love motion blur so much, it's just a big swimmy, pixely slime fest until the camera stops. And Wicked Engine has some really nice velocity-based motion blurring going on, and some really nice techniques as well to decide what kind of style of visual that you want in your game. And you get all that basically at the press of a button. Very, very awesome. I digress. I'm sure that wasn't answering the question. I must have gone off on a tangent. Let's see. So yeah, that is probably the biggest one, just to see that graphical uplift. And just as a side benefit, we've now got a DirectX 12 architecture that will sit happily on someone's Windows of the future for another 5 to 7 years. Are there 3D connections between AppGameKit and GameGuru MAX, like level loaders? No. There was between AppGameKit Classic and GameGuru Classic, but that ended largely because the GG loader wasn't done for Max. There were too many differences in the engines, and so that's where that particular compatibility ends. But it's not a good route anyway, because with the dwindling support of AppGameKit, you'll get your levels across, and then the app won't be publishable on an app store because the operating system's changed again. Probably best to stick with GameGuru MAX and let it take care of platform support. That said, we're only ever intending to support Windows PCs. So if there are any questions buried down here about when will you add Mac support, Linux support, console support, etc., that will be a... There are no plans to do a cross-platform game maker Max with this size of team. Although I can say, in support of the DirectX 12 effort, that Janos, the author of Wicked Engine, has already created support within his architecture for both PlayStation 5 and the Xbox... Is it called the Xbox One or the Xbox X or something? Well, whatever the Xbox is now, you have proprietary support, not proprietary support, but you have... they have a developer program that you got to sign up to and be approved for. And if you have that access, then you'll be able to get access to the Wicked Engine version of it. How useful that will be for us, for GameGuru MAX, who knows? I just feel that small teams should learn to focus and do one thing and do it very well. And I think we've learned by now we have a lot of work cut out just focusing on one platform to a point where it's a popular and useful product. Okay, I'm going to scroll. Oh, God. It's done it again. It's scrolled to some infinite new reality. Let's see if we can find out where I was. No, further up. I think that's what it is. When I let go of the left mouse button on the scroll, it doesn't move. And so when I click it again, it has to refresh with the new chats. I think that's why I ended up holding down the left mouse button forever. Any plans to lure to la la la? No, a bit further up than that. Here we are. Okay, further up than that. Level loaders. So this is it. Leah Cillian. Any plans to allow Lua to set normal map and surface map of entity as well as basic colour and texture? Any plans to allow Lua to set normal map and surface map of entity as well as base colour and texture? I didn't know Lua could set the base colour and texture. That's pretty cool. No, I don't think there are any plans. It doesn't sound too difficult if the normal maps and surface maps are already preloaded. I imagine you'd want to do that for like changing the object based on in-game circumstances, which I guess is why the base colour Lua command exists. So if the base colour command exists, we've got a sort of precedent set, haven't we, for affecting the others. So create an issue. Send me the link at lee@thegamecreators.com. Don't worry, it won't be thegamecreators.com forever. There's a lot of accounts to transfer over, and I'm in the process of it. Eventually, you'll be sending them to lee@dirtbasic.com. In fact, you can actually use lee@dirtbasic.com right now, but it's still full of welcome to Google Workshop and stuff like that. So I'm not really reading it for inquiries right now. But yeah, if you can create it on the issues board, that's where it belongs. And then just to let me know that it's there so I can tag it and set a proper priority for it. Okay, where is the rocket launcher, please, on Max? I just gave it a try and did not see rocket launcher on the start marker option. It's the drop down, isn't it? So if you go into... And you might be right. Customize, dagger... We got... You'll see a lot more here than you've got on yours because I've been testing a lot of things and I have a lot of low poly packs. They have a lot of weapons, the low poly pack. Here we go. You got some Madman melee. There it is, modern RPG. So that's where you'll find it under the M's. And then you can test it. And they're all melee and I got a rocket launcher. It's a bit unfair. Sorry guys. Only not really good as a short range weapon. Run away! Don't worry. Immune. Oh, hi guys. Does it work over there? Yeah, that's what you want. And you. Where'd that one go? Yeah. So yeah, that's the old rocket launcher from GameGuru Classic. Didn't actually take that long to convert to Max, so if If anybody wants to see all the old GameGuru Classic weapons moved across, they don't have the same kind of fidelity and sophistication as the Max weapons, because we did a lot of work to add some nuance to those. But if you just want to have a bit of a nostalgia trip, or maybe get a weapon that you miss because we didn't convert that particular one over to Max, let us know, and it should be easy to do. But really, I added that one just to demonstrate that the projectile system that was once broken has now been fixed, and this demonstrates that it works again. Okay, question: is there a way to import my custom scripts from GameGuru to GameGuru MAX? You know, that's where my brain turns to cheese. Did GameGuru Classic use Lua? Or did it use FPI? Or is FPI FPS Creator? If GameGuru Classic used Lua, then yes, some of your scripts will work in Max, but not all of them. And certainly not any that relate to sort of very classic related feature sets, like the third person, etc. But really, the last time I thought about scripts for Classic was years and years ago. My brain isn't designed to hold on to that kind of information for that long. But I would just say as a blanket answer, generally no. It's always best to start from scratch with GameGuru MAX and Lua, simply because a lot of the commands, the more I think about it, we did have Lua in GameGuru Classic. A lot of the Classic commands are now been completely discontinued. They don't do anything. Replaced with lots of lovely new commands that only work in Max. So you may as well start from scratch with Lua and GameGuru MAX and pull some of the existing scripts and learn from those, and then work your way out. Next question, it's also any plans to allow Lua to add an entity to level which has not already been added? Yeah, it exists. It's called add. Is it spawn new entity? Yeah, something like that. If you tap out, go into global.lua and look for spawn, you'll find the command. It's something like spawn new entity. And then you can just take an existing entity as your parent, something you're copying from, and then you can create as many as you want. Be careful though, you can't have an infinite number of objects, it will slow down your level. Retro Game Block asks, it would be cool if you could load the Unreal MetaHuman NPC models up. Would this be possible? Nothing's impossible. Yeah, I was looking at the announcement for the, I think it's the Unreal 5.6. Oh, that could be Unity. It's probably Unreal 5.6 or 6.5. And the news that they put out was that you could actually create something in MetaHuman and export it to be used in any other game maker. My ears pricked up at that, because if you've looked at MetaHuman, it's freakily real. The faces, they wouldn't be out of place in any CGI movie. The facial mannerisms, the talking, the back-end support for giving it a line of text and it would speak it, and you could hear the different accents and languages and the nuance and inflections. They've got supreme amount of IK in there, so it can sort of, their eyes will follow you around the room. So, and that's just the head. I mean, forget about the rest of the body. So there's a lot of really cool tech in there, but basically what you're asking is, can you take a big chunk of clever stuff that exists inside Unreal and have it work in GameGuru MAX? And if I were to be flippant with that question, can you just turn GameGuru MAX into Unreal, please? Too flippant? So the answer is, I'm not really in the mood to reinvent wheels. However, I am in the mood of taking a MetaHuman that now allows you to export assets and maybe test the possibility of loading those assets into GameGuru MAX. So if that's satisfactory, as the closest I'm going to get to MetaHuman, let me know in the issues board, put it down as, frame it as a feature request. Then I'll invite a few people in on that thread and we can have a discussion about how far we take that. Do we just want the head? Do we just want the talky part? Or do we want the lot? Do we want the entire character, lock, stock and barrel? Of course, the more you want, the longer it'll take, and risk the idea of it ever being done at all. So smaller the better, really. But yeah, let's start that conversation, see if it leads anywhere. Looking for a question mark. I don't see one, but there's certainly a question from Kudu. Is there an option for a female voice in the player character? My female protagonist sound like a man when she takes damage. Yes, there is somewhere, isn't there? Yeah, I always thought it was here. And I guess it's in developer settings. Yeah, there it is. See a sound set, and you've got player. Player is actually set by default as a male. So I think if you go down to voices, is it V for voices? Yes. And player, legacy. Okay, someone deleted it. Probably me. Yeah, we had a whole... it might... Terrible memory. It might have been Classic, which actually had two. It had a male and a female sound set. Then I think when we did Max, we redid all of our sound effects for better, higher quality sound effects. Maybe we only had time or resources to do the male ones, and then even though the facility is, all you can do is change player to player-female, create a folder, player-female, then put all of the same file names in, but with the female protagonist, and then your character will now have a female voice. And I've got that in recent memory, so whether these female versions of all these files already exist, just never made it into the build, that's an interesting question. Can you make an issue of that? Put it down as a bug. It's extremely sexist to only represent 50% of the planet in the drop down for voices. So put that down as a bug. I'm pretty sure we have a female set of all the voices for the player grunts and reactions, etc. So well spotted. Okay, Dink, can you guys make it easier to import characters and their animations on Max? There's quite a lot of material on that. It's never going to be super easy to take any arbitrary character from anywhere on the internet, from any time in history, and just have it completely work perfectly and magically in GameGuru MAX. That universe does not exist today. There's a lot of what do they call them? Rejigging, re-rigging, mapping rigs one to the other, then making lots of small corrections. And by the time you've finished all of that, you may as well have just created the character from scratch. So there's a lot of work to get character A into character B, and it's just as difficult for GameGuru MAX. That being said, there are some common standards in the games industry for how characters are created with common rigs, and those characters are now available in the tens of thousands out there in the interwebs. And so if we can identify, just like we did with, say, for example, the Mixamo stuff and the Blender character rig, if you identify like really popular formats, then yes, definitely interested in making sure those can be imported. Then we re-rig them internally, and then they get slapped with all of the animations that GameGuru MAX has already got. And then they can obey all the logic, the behavior scripts, for example, character attack, melee attack, all the other kind of things that control a character. But yeah, we don't want to do it on a piece-by-piece basis. Show me a format that everyone's using and we don't support. And that's a good argument for making sure the importer can detect and convert from that format. Okay, so before I touch that scroll bar, I'm just going to read to the bottom. Competitions would be fun. I agree, Spicy Sausage. Cillian asks, any plans to add checkbox to disable randomized rotation of terrain textures to allow use tile textures on the terrain? No plans for DirectX 11. Why do I say that with such conviction? Because we're throwing... For DirectX 12, that whole terrain system, the custom shaders I was talking about, gets thrown away. So I'm not planning on changing, I'm not planning on spending any time on a DirectX 11 thing that I know is going to get completely trounced with a superior DirectX 12 equivalent thing. There's no point. It's wasted effort. Best to put your effort into something that will last the ages. That's not to say Preben won't have a stab at it. It's a custom shader, and if you've been watching the blogs recently, Preben's been doing some excellent work adding the ability to slap custom shaders onto objects renderings. The last one I saw that I kind of hinted at and then he created it, it's really cool, is refraction. So I wanted refractive glass in my windows. So you look through the window and it's slightly tinted green and it's refracting what's behind it. All very cool. And that's custom shaders. So he's already in the ballpark for playing with the Wicked shaders, and that twisty texture thing that you see on the train, that was just a technique we used, so the terrain didn't look too tiled when you render it at a distance. So it was a nice little hack, but it worked really well. I guess you want a tiled terrain, probably because you've got a terrain texture that really shows that twist, obviously, and you want it switched off. So I would say drop a nice email to Preben and ask nicely if you can have a look at that shader and see if it can be put on a flag so you can switch it off. Okay, I'm getting to the end of this before I click the scroll button. Is that all of it? From Hostgade Win. Let's see how far we end up missing. Oh wow, it remembered. Brilliant. Maybe YouTube fixed it whilst I was talking. Question, can you guys make it easier to import characters and their animations on Max? I think I've answered that. Yeah, I must have. I remember. And I plan to provide a guide to feature to add technical trees. GGU MAX currently limits to small set of built-in trees. Yeah, the trees were fast but simple. And so again, it's a DirectX 11 quirk of the DirectX 11 implementation, favouring performance over visuals. In the DirectX 12 engine, where trees are provided, or rather the technology to render trees are provided, you get performance and visual quality. And so I think the effort should be spent there on pick the winning horse and then make it even better. So if you want nicer trees, wait for the DirectX 12 one. That would be my suggestion. And any chance we get a mixer overlay to balance audio levels? Ooh, that's well out of my wheelhouse. I did take the advice of using some soundproofing around the microphone. I hope everyone appreciates the sultry tones of the audio coming through this live broadcast, or no one actually noticed any difference whatsoever, but that was either 60 quid well spent or 60 quid wasted. It's certainly surrounding three sides of my microphone now, so you don't get bouncing off the walls. You're probably just hearing my chair creak. It's picking that up with extra gusto. But if you can explain in glorious detail on the issues board what mixer overlay is, what benefit it provides, or it's anything like what I think it might be, which is the environmental audio settings, so you can make your game sound like it's in an auditorium or out in a field or under a cave or different effects like that, and you can use mixers to sort of change those frequency levels and dampen things and sharpen other things. Then I'm kind of where you're going with it, but that's very, very, will anyone notice? That's my question. Will anyone notice the differences? Praxar asks, any chance to create a hole puncher for the terrain so you can put cave systems and underground section models into the map? You can probably guess the answer to this one. I would have if we never did DirectX 12, but as we're completely throwing away the custom shaders for the DirectX 11 terrain and inheriting a whole new procedural system for DirectX 12 terrain, I'm going to punch holes in the DirectX 12 one. If I have to punch holes, I'm punching it in the 12. If you really, really want a hole in your terrain right now, ask Preben to punch a hole in the DirectX 11 one and see what you get. Maybe you'll say yes, maybe you'll say no. It's all custom, so it's certainly doable. It's not like that hard-coded. And I understand why you want it, but there are other ways. You don't have to punch a hole. You can just raise the whole terrain, then drop a massive vertical canyon down, and then cover the top of the canyon with rocks, and you still get that cave that you want. Okay, question from Alexander. In description of live, early access. So, in the description of live is still early access. Can you drop me an email on that, lee@dirtbasic.com, and send me a screenshot? Because I'd like to know where early access still shows. We did a lot of deleting of early access over last 2 years, and it still managed to leak out around the edges. I'd like to get rid of that early access moniker. So back to DX12, nice. Can't wait for it. Can't wait for MP. Well, you've waited a long time. You'll have to wait. Blood Moon Interactive. Tom asks, any thoughts about creating a development roadmap, even if you don't provide target dates? It will give an understanding of the direction over time. I know everyone would want dates attached to that, but yeah, a dateless roadmap along the rough lines of what I've just talked about today in this live broadcast. If everyone thinks that is of value, it's broad enough that it probably won't change. So I think a roadmap of that vulgarity, if that's even a word, loosely termed general ideas of priority but with no dates or timelines, I suppose we could call that an roadmap, if not the world's best roadmap. And for anyone who isn't privy to sitting down and waiting 2 hours whilst they listen through a whole broadcast of the 12th of June, might benefit from a nice quick GIF of a roadmap of where we are and where we want to be in 12 months, or in some months that isn't this month from now. Okay, and next question, or a request. Perhaps a command option for players would be nice, be able to make some Star Wars Republic Commando style gameplay. Yeah, I guess it's the thing, command option for players. Don't play that many games, and the last time I played any sort of command option game was Command and Conquer. Now that's probably such an old game, a lot of people are just staring at the screen now thinking, what's Command and Conquer? It was an RTS top-down game, very cool. In case you're interested. Okay, so Maxwell now, question mark. Could be. If the prototype work is successful, we will be updating to DX12 at some point in the future. Okay, and oh my D, this will cause only a slow queue down in development like the old GGC transition at the time. No new features for a long time. Well, if that's what you want, then that's what we'll do. Right, mark it everyone, we are not adding any new features for a long time. The community has spoken. If you disagree, continue to talk. Blood Moon Interactive could use an AI agent to read the GitHub updates and formulate a readable update systematically. I did. It took a while, and the chat versions of GitHub Copilot had API limits, so it wouldn't give me more than 6 commits, which was useless for a summary. So I had to go into the API behind the scenes using GitHub CLI, grabbed the last 3 months of commits, filtered them down to just the descriptions rather than like all the metadata, then fed that back into the AI agent, and I got a pretty decent summary out of it. At the moment, there's a few manual steps. I think at some point we can get that so it's just press a button or just ask the AI to do that, and then it should actually prepare the whole announcement without me getting my hands dirty. So AI is here, we just have to use it properly so it doesn't take longer than just doing it the old-fashioned way. Okay, so Prebin and Necrim usually hold the fort in that area. They certainly do, and then some. Monkey Frog Studios replies to me, Stesso. Paul Walker also replies, and a question is, will the UI editor be improved? Oh, can we keep that one and take it to the top? Yeah. Will the UI editor be improved? It needs a lot of quality of life improvements. I agree with that statement actually, and yes, the UI editor will absolutely be improved in those areas that through long testing, through a long suffering community, we have identified as being in need of improvement. Now, I'm not saying wholesale rewrites for the DirectX 11 version of GameGuru MAX. The general shape has been set, but as I mentioned, the grid and alignment settings, clearly a bad place to put it. So that's a perfect example how we're going to improve the UI over the next years. So yeah, the answer is yes to both of those. Question? No, there's no question mark there. And there's no question mark from Cillian. Any plans for displaying HTML markup instead of just plain text? No. No plans to do any kind of HTML anything inside a Game Maker. Thank you very much. I would have to have a really good scenario where HTML plays a role in a computer game. Just to come out of this screen a little bit. Won't save all them. You see this? This is the storyboard editor, and if you look at this, this is the screen editor, right? So HTML, you'd probably create your HTML layout somewhere else and then save it as a file and then drag it in. Well, this is your HTML editor where you can drag in elements, give them images, text, buttons, da 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 da, and it's all built into GameGuru MAX. So I'd argue, no HTML, we just have this, and then you can make your stuff right inside the product, right inside the screen editor. Much better. But that's a personal opinion. Okay, another question. Yep, this is from YumiJS. A question. You mentioned something about a grid system in the segment edit, and the segment editor is going to be related to that. I'm not sure I understand. Would you be able to elaborate a little further? Just to be clear, there is no segment editor. The segment editor existed in FPS Creator Classic. It was very popular and successful. It never survived FPS Creator. It was entirely replaced with what you now understand as the GameGuru MAX level editor, which instead of painting down rooms and corridors, you place individual objects side by side in order to create the walls of your room. And it takes a very long time to do it that way. Whereas in the segment editor, you'd literally just have a grid and paint the floor, and it would automatically add the walls and the ceiling, and if you just run off at a tangent, that would then be a corridor, super quick. So the big call is bring it back. The grid editor, let me just get me a towel. Better to demonstrate with, say, a palette, because it's relatively square. The grid system, as it currently exists, hidden in the object properties, lets you do things like this. You can very quickly align your object based on its size, either a manual size you fitted, or you can pull it from the object itself to do this. What I'm suggesting is, rather than this method, which you literally are left click, left click, left click, left click, left click, instead of that, what if you could just have this like a palette, like an ink, and could just draw it in right there, like draw, fill, then the right mouse button, delete any you've mistakenly, like you've gone painted outside of your square, right click would just delete it, and then you're back painting. So I'm not saying the full segment editor, I'm just saying that kind of really closely relates to the whole idea of the grid system. So maybe it could just be a slight extension to the way you drop objects into the scene. That's all I meant. I'm certainly not advocating we resurrect the segment editor in one fell swoop. Just creep up on it, perhaps. Just creep up on it when it's not looking. Praxa asks, any chance that we could put on the player start module for legs and head modules so that we can put models for helmets and legs and models with animations? That way we can put models for helmets and leg armor models with animations. Let me reread that. Any chance we could put the player start modules for legs and head models so that we can put models for helmets and legs, armors and blah, 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 blah. Well, that sounds like you want to have first person but look down and see your own legs and your arms. But also it could mean that maybe you're kind of edging towards third person. We can drag in a whole character and specify that for the start marker. And so you not only have the legs, you've got the body and the head and everything. And then by extension, you might want that character to have more than just the complement of 2 arms, 2 legs and a head and a body and glasses and a beard and a hat, but then also other accessories that you can add and tack on based on the frame, the bone structure of the body. That's an expansive question, and so any answer will be insufficient. But there has been internal talk about, wouldn't it be nice if, even in first person, you could see your own shadow being cast? And that's, you can only guess, that's kind of leading down the line, down the path of a third person option. So you don't have a game which is either first person or third person. You just have a game that you get to choose whether your game is first person, third person, or both. There's a lot of games One of my favourite games, Fallout 4, has both. I prefer to play in first person, but if I mouse wheel, suddenly I'm seeing my character in third person. And a lot of people like to play in third person. Or mouse wheel the opposite direction, you're back in first person. For Max, that's kind of how I'm seeing the whole third person conversation evolve. And as a byproduct of that work, yes, being able to cast a shadow when you're in first person, or actually having the ability to look down and see your legs and arms, is just as a freebie. It's a benefit of doing the third person perspective work properly. Hopefully that answers some of the question, but it won't be all of the answer. Okay, looking for a question under that one. So that's a conversation to Monkey Frog. James asks, go to Educate Discord for those answers. There are ways. Yep, there's a whole Discord there. James, will we move to the top? Question. Any plan to allow Lua to create a window to display HTML? PNG images generated by Lua graphics module like Nash, available on GitHub. No plans to display HTML. I think I've already covered that. I don't like HTML in a game. It just feels wrong. Yeah, work smarter, not harder. Absolutely. Question. Can we have prefabs that maintain logic connections without need to every time we reassign them? It is a lot of pain to redo again and again the same thing. So prefabs that maintain logic connections without needing to assign them. If you could put that down on the issues board as a potential bug, because there's some things you can do already in terms of getting an object, assigning its behavior, and then cloning that behavior, and it keeps the logic that you've assigned to it. As opposed to, say, for example, the let me just, is that okay? Yeah, okay. That one and that one, as opposed to the visual logic system, which isn't meant to sort of duplicate. So you don't duplicate that and then this link just duplicates as well. This is always a specific logic process. So you're connecting this key with that particular door, that switch with that particular booby trap. And so that's why it's done on an individual connection basis, rather than being able to just duplicate it. Because I've seen levels where there's a lot of these visual connections. It becomes unreadable very quickly. So you need to have full manual control of that process, if that's what you mean. Okay, and Blood Moon asks, can you get allies to fight enemies on a perpetual basis such that no one actually dies to create large battle scenes? Yes, of course. Give them all infinite health and they'll fight till doomsday. It is quite fun actually, and actually I use it quite often to test, because I want to test the interactions and the different sort of combat stances and statuses. But if they keep killing each other too quickly, I never get to do a proper test. So I ramp everyone's health up so they can fight for hours. So yeah, you can do that if your game needs that. Can probably set that. Yeah, there you go. Well, I don't set the damage to 0. I know that used to be a thing, but I don't think I've disconnected that, because damage 0 means instantly die. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, your character would die if you tried to set its health to 0. I could be wrong. I do remember some code in there that if it detects 0 as the initial state of health, it sets it to invulnerable. So please correct me if I'm right or wrong there. How do we block? Right mouse button. It doesn't work with every melee weapon. Only the ones that have been crafted to have the extra blocking animations. But for example, the melee weapons, the ones created by Mert Blosser, those have additional animations. So if you click the right mouse button, instead of like a secondary like quick stab attack, it's a block. And if you time it right, similar to the iframes of, say, the Dark Souls game genre, if you time it right, your block will intercept the actual moment of attack, and that converts their attack into a stumble. And then whilst they're stumbling, you can counterattack during another frame of opportunity, in which case you can floor them. So it's just the right mouse button, but only for certain melee weapons. And certainly we'll be going through all the melee weapons that are stock weapons in GameGuru MAX, make sure they all have those animations. But it's a relatively new thing, and as you've seen, we're still trialing out and tweaking some of the distance factors that look a little bit silly, especially if there's an enemy that runs off really quick and seems to fall over even though the attack animation was at 500 units away. It seems a bit odd. I've tried this before, but the allies follow you around like lost puppies. Oh, I see what you mean. You don't want the allies to follow the player, just be single-minded about finding enemies to attack. That could probably just be a tick box in the character attack behavior. So, see this one. In fact, it could be character attack and melee attack. But in all these tick boxes down here, maybe there's another one which is ignore player or something, in which case there will be no attempt to follow the player, and then you get that sort of battle royale between enemy and ally. Let's put that down as a feature request and send me a link so I can tag it for priority. But probably a very easy, in fact it is a very easy thing to do, because I can write that in the behavior editor. It's probably just a couple of logic blocks and it's done. Okay. Oops. Thank you, YouTube. Wonderful. Made my day. And I found my lost position. What is the block button? The block button is the right mouse button. There you go, Paul Walker. Thank you very much. The real M3. Now you finally have my attention back on GameGuru MAX. Hey, I'm nothing but persistent. Synchro62, Lee, you will find the AI look much better now if the speed is set to 70%. Optimizations have turned them into Charlie Chaplin. Could you try it sometime and maybe set the default speed to 70? You mean Charlie Chaplin's in the really quick? Yeah, we have so many characters now created over the course of years, and then weapons created over the course of years. There isn't like a single mindset for what is the right speed, what is this movement speed, animation speed, native speed, reaction times, things like that. And it'd be good if we could sort of unify that, sort of anyone who gets the product out of the box, there aren't any Charlie Chaplin surprises. And if you could help pointing those out, that would be a big time saver for me. Is it like everything is now 70, or do we adjust the code inside to keep everything at 100 and we just make it as if it was 70? That might be another way of doing it without changing all the assets over. Cilion asks, any plans to allow Lua to change the height of a vertex in a terrain mesh? Can you guess my answer? If it's to do with the terrain, I'm going to do any terrain stuff with DirectX 12. I'll leave the DirectX 11 terrain alone, but you're quite happy to badger prep and it might get put in. I know I used to have that ages ago where you can manipulate the height in the game of your terrain. I used to do it back in 1999 when a tank shell exploded. I could curve out a big crater in the floor, which was really cool. But I think you'd have to present a good scenario, in which case either gets ignored or it gets taken as a priority. Okay, I just seen jump scare but no question, but I want to know. Jump scare question. Using a picture to pop up full screen, is there any way to make it once off scare? As of now it repeats every time you trigger it. Yeah, you should be able to have a trigger that only triggers once. In fact, if you play one of the demos, is it Zombie Escape? Let's have a quick look. Do I save? No. Let's go into the demos, people. And just try and give you the name. I'm not going to go into it. There it is, Trapped. If you play the Trapped game created by Felix Kolbach, that little painting there in the screenshot, just click it there, see? That's a secret way in. It opens, and as soon as you climb up and through, you get a jump scare. But it doesn't repeat, it only does it once. So click on that object and see what settings it has. So you only get a single jump scare instead of it triggering each and every time. But then I could be wrong. Okay, question. Any plans for video textures in GameGuru MAX and similar to that of GameGuru Classic? The reason I'm going to say no, it still could happen in GameGuru MAX, DirectX 11 edition. The reason I'm saying no is in the DirectX 12 one, and you'll know why I'm going to say this if you look at the Wicked Engine's latest videos. Not only do they play videos in a texture, but the videos act as light sources. So forget about area lighting. This is video area lighting. So the video pixels itself acts as an individual little LED lights that light your scene. Your whole scene is awash with different colours moving around as the animation of the video plays. It's absolutely extraordinary. So why would I flirt around with some video texture in DX11 when that's on the horizon? Let's get into prototyping and get that up and running. That's what I want to do. But yeah, if anyone else says, no, you can talking rubbish, we all want videos, then yeah, scream at me on Discord. Okay, what did I miss? Oh, Dan, you missed a lot. But we got it on the YouTubes, and so you can find the whole recording once. If YouTube decides to keep all of this, YouTube was playing silly buggers earlier, and there's no guarantee any of this will survive. This will be, you either hear and heard it, or Lee's not going to repeat it. So maybe this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Another question, I build educational games that need display of formatted text. Font size, type, color, alignment, subscripts. HTML is industry standard and Lua modules exist. Can I have a window? No. No, we're not primarily a educational game builder. In fact, you could argue we're quite the opposite. If you look at a lot of our demos, it usually involves guns, shooting people, gore, blood, explosions, finding bigger weapons, shooting more people, making larger explosions, or gruesome, drippy zombies. When I used to provide software into education, they kind of frowned on that kind of stuff. The kids didn't. The kids loved it. But the parents didn't like it, and the teachers didn't like it. And I don't think the current content map for GameGuru MAX works so well right now in the educational sector. So it isn't our primary market, is what I'm kind of saying. But I'm not gonna. I never say never. But I need a scenario. I need a case study that proves the point. That proves this is more important than DX12. This is more important than third person. And you won't have to argue with me as much as with the whole community. And that's where you're really going to find it a bit difficult. And that's basically it. I could be wrong. I could be way wrong. Craven Guru, Lee, since you're doing a melee at the moment, would you consider adding unique sounds for swinging weapons that into thinner versus when they hit an enemy or object, different distinct sounds? I already started a small set of sound effects for that. And not just like one sound for a whoosh. I've done like 4 or 6 sounds for a whoosh. And then a clonk when the whoosh actually strikes and hits something. The problem is I am not, and probably never was, an artist, whether that's a visual artist or an audio sound artist. So I usually wait for some charitable soul to come along and volunteer to provide some new sound effects for the product, and then they get dropped in to improve the makeshift ones I've cobbled together as placeholders, or replace sound effects that have been previously donated and graciously integrated into the software. And I think you're right, we do need some more sound effects for, it's alright doing the animations, and it's alright doing the positioning and the timing, and then of course the balancing of losing health and combat, the story of the combat, the initial strat, the block, the counter attack, the missed opportunity, the get up and start again. But we don't have all the sound effects to tell that story. We have a whoosh and a clonk and a defense sound effect, and that's kind of it. So it'd be great if there was anyone out there who was either pretty good at sound effect origination or knows someone who can sell a decent priced license of sounds that we can then redistribute within a game maker. What I mean by that is it's a special kind of license that we'll license it, but we also have permission to give it to someone else who then can also distribute it, and that's a weird kind of license, and usually most people don't want to do that. They want to license direct to the person who's going to distribute a game, not license something to a person who gives it to someone else who then releases it as a game. Yeah. The world of licensing, very tricky sometimes. Okay, and this one, Synchro 62. Regarding the Charlie Chaplin speed, nothing to change on models, they just walk and run fast now. Setting speed equals 70 fixes all. Right, can you pop that up as a bug? I never intended our characters to be ridiculous. Charlie Chaplin is a figure of ridicule, and we need to solve that. Sounds like a bug to me. I think we're ending the chat now. If I leave that scroll bar alone and I answer questions fast enough, I don't need to touch that scroll bar again. Hooray. So, Spicy Sausage says no for HTML. Praxa, I mean, video textures have been one of those things. Being said, what I'm seeing from Wicked Engine, patience is warranted. Thank you. It only takes a bit of patience. I can't promise an exact date, but I promise to not dilly-dally. I'll not be hanging around on this one because I know the benefits everyone's going to get if we can pull it off and make it a successful integration, a successful upgrade. Added bonus of forcing my lazy ass to learn how to make Atlas textures. Yes, absolutely. And you get to have some fun as well. Morebot, gotta run. Thanks for everything. Look forward to GameGuru MAX in the future. My pleasure, my pleasure. And that forces me to look at the clock. 9:54. When did we start? Well, when did we really start? We started at 7:25. So say 7:30, and we're now creeping up to 10. 7:30, 8:30, 9:30, 10. That's 2.5 hour broadcast. Yeah, I'm going to get banned. YouTube's going to ban me. I can feel it. I can feel the algorithm giving me the evils. Okay, so we are down to the last bit, and there's not many questions left. I think there's one question left, so let's wrap this up. The last two questions get answered, and that's one from Dan. You're talking about CC by SA 4.0. I don't know. Am I talking about CC by SA 4.0? I'll trust that you know whether I'm talking CC by SA 4.0. And the last question from Craven Guru. Says, thank you, Lee. I was actually just referring to support for another sound slot for melee weapons that plays when they hit something versus swinging or missing. Another sound slot, eh? These sound slots are mighty popular, aren't they? Yes. Drop that into the issues board. Send me an email with that link to that issue. I'll make that happen as a gift, as the final farewell gift for this live broadcast. Anyone who's still stuck around after 2.5 hours, well done. Shows true solidarity there with the community. Hopefully I've answered many of the questions that was on everyone's minds, and reassured anyone who thought the news would be bad that actually the news is very good, and GameGuru MAX now has that opportunity to get more creative, become a better, stronger product, and move to a place where games made in GameGuru MAX is an everyday thing, and it's a no-brainer to choose GameGuru MAX if you want to accelerate your game development. So thanks very much for joining. I'm now going to very carefully end this broadcast in the hopes that it doesn't get deleted, and then I'll do a bit of editing. I'll get it up on YouTube, so anyone who missed the 12th of June live broadcast, and if they want to, get to watch 2.5 hours of broadcast. I mean, it's unheard of, a 2.5 hour YouTube video. And it's really hot in here, actually. I just looked up from the chat to reality, and wow, longest ever. I guess it was right. 12th of June demanded nothing less. Okay, well, thanks very much for those who showed up. I will crack on now with the plans of moving all the residual things over to Dark Basic Software Limited. As always, if you've got any questions for the community, Discord's your place. If the community can't help, I'm always available at lee@darkbasic.com or lee@thegamecreators.com. So until then, until next time, I shall say adieu.